everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. And this is the Get Literate podcast. Each week, we mix together books, notebooks, mindful practices, and creativity to cultivate a life we love. You can expect regular weekly episodes focused on 3 books you need to know about on a bookish theme, and we'll bring those themes to life in our actual lives too. You can also expect author interviews, notebooking inspiration, and topics to help us grow through what we go through. Now, let's grab a notebook and your TBR list and let's get literate. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Get Literate podcast. I'm Stephanie, and I have some bookish fun for you today. So we're going to continue our holiday reading theme throughout the month of December with something that might be a bit unexpected today. Today, we are celebrating Festivus. Yep, I said it, Festivus. For those that don't know, Festivus is a holiday that is celebrated on December 23rd, which is coming up soon, as an alternative to the pressures and the commercialization of the Christmas season. And you got it, it started on the popular television series Seinfeld. I love Seinfeld. I think I have watched, along with my husband and most of my kids, just about all of the seasons and can probably quote lots of things from each of those episodes. Festivus was a holiday that was featured in season 9, episode 10, on December 18th, 1997. So we are going back just a little bit. And since then, many devoted fans celebrate Festivus along with Frank Costanza and the Seinfeld crew as part of their holiday festivities. Now, if you want to go really deep into this unusual holiday and find out where it started and whose idea it actually was and how it made it on to Seinfeld in the first place, then there are a couple of books I want to suggest right off the bat. First is Festivus, The Holiday for the Rest of Us by Alan Salkin, and the foreword is actually written by Frank Costanza himself, Jerry Stiller. The second book is Festivus the Book, a complete guide to the holiday for the rest of us. You're getting the motto here, by Mark Nelson. And one more, The Real Festivus, the story behind the American made-up holiday by Dan O'Keefe. Isn't it amazing that a made-up holiday can actually become a holiday in the first place? And a holiday that simply existed in the television minds of characters now exists throughout all of us too? I think that's fascinating. But essentially, there are 4 components to Festivus, if you don't already know this holiday, and they're quite fun. Number 1 is the Festivus pole. Yes, I have one. And it is a very simple aluminum pole in what would have been a Christmas tree stand, so that we are getting rid of all the trappings of Christmas and the commercialization of Christmas and just celebrating with something pretty bland. Number 2 is the airing of grievances. Now, I personally think that this is the most fun part of Festivus. And this is where the head of the household tells others how they have disappointed them. Number 3 is the Festivus dinner. Now, it's nothing special because we're not going over the top. And if we look to the Seinfeld episode, meatloaf on lettuce was what was served in there. And number 4, the feats of strength. This is where the head of the household actually chooses another participant in their holiday gathering to fight. And yes, Festivus is technically not over until the head of the household was taken down. So yes, this is a made-up holiday. Yes, this is a ridiculous holiday. But yes, it's pretty awesome. And I thought it would be fun to pair up books to match to those components of Festivus. So I've got 4 books and a couple little bonuses that I mentioned that I think really represent those 4 components of Festivus, just for us to have a little bit of holiday fun. Sure, it can inspire your holiday reading in a new way, and it can just lighten the spirit as well. So get your Festivus poll out and get ready, because here we go. So the first component I want to talk about is the Festivus poll. Now, the Festivus poll is in opposition to the very highly decorated, commercialized Christmas tree, right? It's very low maintenance. There is nothing to do, nothing to prepare, nothing to decorate. And in Frank Costanza's words, tinsel's distracting, so we shouldn't have it. So in thinking of this, if the Festivus poll signifies moving away from just the stuff of Christmas, one book immediately came to mind as signifying getting rid of the trappings and instead focusing on what matters most, or just not focusing on it at all. And that book that instantly came to mind was Skipping Christmas by John Grisham. What also came to mind was the movie version of that book, my all-time favorites, which is Christmas with the Cranks. So you might know the book, you might know the movie. There are lots of similarities between the two, with just a few little things that are a little bit off. But essentially, Nora and Luther, who are parents to Blair, are getting ready to celebrate a holiday season without their daughter for the first time. Blair is heading off to the Peace Corps, and Nora and Luther are a little bit beside themselves because they don't know how to handle this holiday season without her. She is literally leaving right at Christmas time, and it's leaving a big hole in their hearts. So what do they decide to do? Well, Luther decides that they should skip Christmas, and instead they should go on a cruise. Nora's a little more reluctant, but she does end up going along, and this book talks about their journey of skipping Christmas. No Christmas cards, no Christmas tree, no donations to their typical holiday gifting places, no Christmas Eve party. All of those things. And in the story, it is quite funny, but also gives you something to think about all of those things that we do. Do they matter to us? Do they matter in the big scheme of things? What happens if we do them? What happens if we don't do them? And the story really goes through and shows the difficulties that they faced. Nora, different from Luther. And then the best part. What happens when Blair unexpectedly calls and says, guess what? I'm coming home for Christmas. And not only that, I'm bringing my fiance too. And you've got the Frosty the Snowman up on the house, right? You've got my special desserts I love, right? You're having the holiday party, right? And of course they say, of course we are. And the rest of the book is what happens as they try to get ready for Blair's unexpected homecoming. And in the process, figure out what really matters most about Christmas. I loved the book. I loved the movie. And I think it's the perfect book to pair with the Festivus poll, because it does just strip away all of those things that we do at Christmas and really questions them. Now, if you're looking for another book that doesn't have a fictional line, but is more of an informational book to help you figure out if you're too highly decorated or too highly commercialized, you might take a look at Jen Hatmaker's book, The 7 Days of Christmas. This is based on her project of 7, where she really reduced the stuff in her life. She pared down everything to find out what matters most, and she's applying that principle to the Christmas season. So in the book, she walks you through ways to think about 7 aspects of your life and to pare them down so that we can figure out what matters most at Christmas time. She asks us to think about our kitchen, our fashion, our stuff, our streaming, our tossing, our spending, and of course, our stressing. So it's a beautiful faith-based book with lots of text and lots of beautiful pictures and quotes that really bring home that message. So whether you're into fiction or you want a little nonfiction, I think either of those books would represent the Festivus pole quite well for you this holiday season. Now, let's move on to what is probably my favorite part, and that is the airing of grievances. So in the episode, Frank Costanza actually says to his guests at the holiday, "Welcome, newcomers. The tradition of Festivus begins with the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people, and now you're going to hear about it." I mean, what better way to think about a family gathering at the holiday times? Now, because I love a good family saga, and clarification, I love a good family saga on the page, not in person. I love the airing of grievances and thinking about books that really match perfectly. And to be honest, I was torn between sharing two of them with you, so I'm going to mention them both. The first is The Latecomer by Jean Hanff Korelitz. The second is Apples Never Fall by Leanne Moriarty. I went back and forth here because both are excellent family dramas. Both span multiple generations. Both of them give you that wonderful perspective of alternating between characters, so you get the inside scoop behind everyone in the story, and both have all the family drama. But I think for the airing of grievances, I'm going to choose The Latecomer by Jean Hanff Korelitz because it really leans in to the airing of grievances in a way that just screams Festivus, truly. So in this book, we meet Sallow and Johanna, and we learn about the very opulent Oppenheimer family, a family that looks one way on the outside, but operates quite another on the inside. I mean, there's a family drama for you. So they are struggling with infertility early in their marriage, and Johanna is finally blessed with triplets after years and years of infertility by going through the in vitro process, a process that was fairly new at the time that this story was set. Now, she has high hopes and big dreams. She does everything that she can to grow her family with love and with laughter and with connection and with togetherness. But it just isn't enough. Each member of the family seems to pull apart and pull away, and she is just stuck in a life that she didn't think she'd have. Now, years later, faced with the unthinkable and the unimaginable, I'm not going to give it away, she ends up having a fourth child, revisiting those embryos from her earlier in vitro fertilization, and brings a fourth child unexpectedly into the family. Now, this child will play a very integral role in this story, especially in bringing this fractured family back together. So the book is a slow burn, and it really gives us this just uncanny glimpse into the hearts and minds of each character, not to mention big ideas about how the world works, how families work, and how they can heal. So I think The Latecomer is a perfect book for the airing of grievances because of this. And I've got one particular beach scene in mind that I think if you read this, you will connect to Frank Costanza's airing of grievances too. Now, moving on to the third component of Festivus, that's the Festivus dinner. Now, many families go all out for the holiday dinners, right? Some cook at home, some order out, some do some sort of family tradition. Regardless of what you do, there's usually some kind of tradition around food at the holiday season. But Festivus kind of does business as usual, right? This is getting rid of the trappings of the holiday season. And to prove it, if you were to watch that episode again, you would see that the Festivus dinner was actually some meatloaf on a bed of lettuce. That's it. Nothing too spectacular here. So I've got a cookbook that I think fits the bill perfectly here. And that cookbook is A Meatloaf in Every Oven: Two Chatty Cooks one iconic dish, and dozens of recipes from moms to Mario Batali. It's written by Frank Bruni and Jennifer Steinhauer, and it's got a 4.5 rating scale on Amazon. Yes, I had to look it up because I do not cook. I try, it never works. And so I'm not a very good judge of cookbooks. So I have to go to those that are. But what I loved about this cookbook is that it was more than a cookbook. It opens with the history of the meal, the importance of this meal over time. It admits their meatloaf prejudices, if there is such a thing, discusses the merits of breadcrumbs, raw onions, and food processors, and a whole lot of pretty iconic and pretty flexible meatloaf recipes too, including a debate about using or not using the meatloaf pan. So we really love when cookbooks weave together the recipe with the backstory and other little tidbits, and that's what this book does. We've got a whole section on classic meatloaf recipes, meatloaf from around the world. We're debating whether meatloaf should have lamb or turkey or chicken. There's even a meatless meatloaf section, and so many recipes that they say are meatloaf with guilty pleasures, aka bacon. I mean, who knew there was an entire book dedicated to meatloaf? Now, I think there's worth mentioning a second cookbook because Festivus dinner is dinner as usual. It's nothing fancy. And so the cookbook that Alyssa Brantley wrote, the I Don't Want to Cookbook, I think fits the bill here too. There's 100 tasty, healthy, low prep recipes for when you just don't want to cook. And so that's why this cookbook especially appealed to me. There are sections for breakfast, there's less work lunches, and dinners that don't take all day, and more. So there are two cookbooks for you. One that really leans into the Festivus tradition of meatloaf, and one that just gets you thinking about cooking when you don't want to, because Festivus doesn't do anything special. All right, we are moving on to the last one. And the last component of Festivus is the feats of strength. So on Festivus, again, December 23rd, the head of the household tests his or her strength against another person of their choosing and starts off with the phrase, "Let's rumble." So in fact, Festivus isn't considered over until the head of household has been pinned. Now there is a caveat. If the participants don't want to, if the participants have, in their words, something better to do, they can decline this challenge. But essentially, Festivus isn't over until the head of household, who has aired all his grievances, is taken down. So I wanted to bring to you a book focused on strength. Right? So I thought about strength, I thought about fitness, and I thought about fun too, because this is a ridiculous Festivus practice. Fitness Junkie by Lucy Sykes and Joe Piazza fits the bill perfectly. I loved this book. Now you're right, you might recognize these authors. Together, the two of them wrote a previous book called The Knockoff, which was a novel about fashion. And Joe Piazza actually wrote a novel that I loved with Christine Pride called We Are Not Like Them. So if you're wondering if you know these authors, you might. So anyway, back to the book, Fitness Junkies. This is a delightful book that truly pokes fun at the fitness industry. And it pokes fun at the fitness industry, but it still maintains this really rich inner plot that the characters go through as she works on this transformation of self. So it definitely has some fun, light elements, but there is definitely a deep storyline here too. So in the book, we meet Janie, and Janie is a middle-aged woman who has just gotten a divorce. She has lost her parents, both of them fairly close to each other, and she was forced on leave from work too. Now, why was she forced out of her job? Well, it was because she was eating a bruffin and was photographed doing so at a fashion event. Now, if you don't know, the bruffin is, in the terms of the book, a love child between a brioche bun and a muffin. So Janie was fired because she wasn't maintaining the weight that she was when she started her position as CEO of a bridal dress company with her childhood best friend. Yes, her childhood best friend made her go on leave because of the weight she had gained during this very stressful period of time. It's ridiculous. Now, she is devastated at first, and she is convinced that she will do anything she can to get back into the company and get back in good graces with her best friend. So she sets off on this journey of weight loss. And let me tell you, this is where the fun begins. She tries ridiculous crazes. She tries very extreme things, classes, juices, cleanses. She basically gets particularly obsessed with the fitness field. Now, in this process, throughout this journey, not only is she going on this fitness journey, but she ends up meeting multiple new love interests. She gets some pretty amazing new business ideas, even as she's battling how to get back into her old company. And ultimately, she lands herself in a place where she questions it all. I can't say more than that. My favorite part, though, I want to make sure I point out about this book is the concept of wealth. And I'm not talking about money wealth, wealth. I'm talking about wellness wealth, wellth. This just took a sentence or two in the book, but it truly impacted me as a reader. This idea that so much of the world focuses on monetary wealth instead of inner wealth. And that was something that even if they only mentioned it once, it was definitely central throughout this book, as it got you to think about Janie's journey and all of the ridiculously crazy things she was doing just to lose weight. So the book is hysterical. It's funny. It's real. This kind of stuff happens, even if exaggerated a bit for this book. And it takes you on this character's journey. And it's a journey that all of us, every single one of us can learn from, because we have all battled, at least I think we have all battled, with some sort of issue of our self-esteem, whether it's our weight, whether it's the way we show up in the world, the way we look on the outside. This book tackles that. And so it may not be a feat of physical strength like the Festivus feats of strength, but this book definitely is a champion for the mental ones. And that's why I loved it so much. Okay, so there you have it, a collection of books to help you celebrate Festivus, Festivus for the rest of us. So you might be wondering, how in the world am I going to bring this bookish theme to life in my actual life? Because you know that's what we talk about at the end of every episode. And I'm here just to tell you to have some fun. Think about your holiday. Think about the way that you typically celebrate your holiday. And give yourself permission to just do what you love. And also give yourself permission to leave something else behind if it just doesn't feel right or serve you and your family well. And also give yourself permission to make up something new altogether. Maybe you celebrate Festivus on the 23rd by reading one of these books. Maybe you celebrate Festivus by just getting together with family and having a fun conversation about the topic. I mean, bringing up Festivus and bringing up the idea of making up your own holiday could be some pretty good dinner table conversation. I don't recommend that you embrace the airing of grievances at all. And instead, I want you to just take away the lightness of this holiday and bring it into the last couple of days we have left before the holiday begins. I do hope you carve out just a little bit of time on the 23rd to think about Festivus, though, and how you might bring this fun, bookish theme to life. So as always, All of the books mentioned will be found in the show notes, and you can head to alitlife.com. And there's still time to rate and review the podcast before the end of the year, where I'll be giving away another book journal set. So it's the book journal plus a little bit more literate bling. One more thing. We won't have a usual episode on Thursday because, well, it's right before the holiday and we are all busy with some holiday things to do. So I will be back next week. I hope you have a wonderful holiday. I hope it is everything that you want it to be and that you're blessed with friends and family and food. And yes, even a little bit of Festivus. Happy reading, everyone, and I will be back after the holiday. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing lives, like bonus podcast episodes, book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. But one more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks so much for listening.